Hi, and welcome to the video on naming of fractions. Now, very often when students have to name fractions properly, it is a little bit of challenge because typically we just use what we think is correct, and it may not always be correct. So I just want to show you and start off first a couple of fractions that everyone should know how to name. And those ones are, for example, 1/2. So the keyword here is half. And the other one is 1/4. So 1/4. And again, the keyword here is quarter. So the 2 at the bottom and the 4 at the bottom, so in the denominators, basically are known as 1/2 and 1/4, and that is very, very common. And now that we know that, okay, we can try to move over to some of the other, okay, naming fractions and kind of create a general overview of like, how do I actually name a fraction properly? So for instance, sometimes people would say 1/2, right? Or 1/4, which is fine, but that's not the proper way of naming it. So 1/2 and 1/4 in this case. Now here are some other examples that I'm going to try to walk you through. So for instance, if you had, and that we can make the fractions a little bit bigger slowly. So if we have 3/7, which is typically what most people would say, so 3/7 in itself. So in this case, when you want to name a fraction in the proper way, so what we do is we take the numerator. So I'm going to take that numerator. And we actually name it as a cardinal number. Now, you may not know the word cardinal number, but you certainly know, okay, how to count numbers. So for instance, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 100, 254. So those are just cardinal numbers. And we simply would say, so in this case, we would state 3 because that is 3 in the numerator. Now, instead of saying over 7, so what we do not do is we don't say over, but instead what we do is we will take the denominator, and in this case it's the 7, and we will state it as an ordinal number. Now, an ordinal number is a number which is, for instance, if you were in line and waiting, and for instance, you were the first person in line or the second person in line, third person in line, fourth, fifth, sixth, so on, 124th. So those are ordinal numbers. They create an order that you actually are in. So 7, you for instance wouldn't say I am 7 in line, you would say you are 7th in line. So we take this denominator and we will say 7th. So that is the ordinal number, so 3/7. Now, when we look at the actual denominator and then compare it to the numerator, so our numerator, for instance, here is plural. So it's not singular. Singular means 1. So now, if it's more than 1, then what we have to do is we have to add an S at the end because we have 3 pieces out of 7 pieces. And we say that 3/7 with the S at the end. If it was only 1/7, then instead we would say 1/7, and there would be no S because 1 is just singular. So for instance, if you had 1 cat, okay, you're going to say cat. You're not going to say I have 1 cats. But if you have 2, you're not going to say 2 cat. You're going to say 2 cats. So that's the same thing here. So that's that S that we add to the number in the denominator. All right. So let's look at a few examples so that you can hopefully grasp some of these concepts a little bit and try it on your own. So for instance, how would we say this? So 5/10 would be common way, but the proper way would be to say the numerator as a cardinal number, which is 5. And then the 10 as an ordinal number, so that would be 10th in line. So this would be written as 5/10ths. And again, the plural because we have 5 of them. So 5/10. So another example for these, and you can try this one. So for instance, if we would have, so this one, and it would sound very odd to you. So for this one would be 7/31. 7/31, which is very odd, right? But you are 31st in line. So 7/31. So that's how we would say this one. And they can definitely get much bigger. So if we have something like this, so that would be 120 215ths. 120 215ths. That's how we would say this one properly. So if you like, okay, so and I challenge you, so put it up in the comments. How would you say this one? And you can put that down in the comments below. Okay, so thank you for watching.